Hey, how's it going guys? Welcome back to another video. So this is my first video in a couple of weeks. As promised, I'm just doing a general collection video, continuing down my existing collection. And what's different about this one is I'm talking about just one band today, like all 6 albums that I own by that band. So I have talked about doing a ranking discographies in the past, and technically it's not possible with this band because I don't own all releases, but I'm going to work my way around that somehow, so that's what I'll be doing. So the band I'm talking about, the band in question, is one which needs no introduction. Many people are familiar with it. The band is, of course, Burzum. You know, a legendary name in the Norwegian black metal scene. If you're watching this channel, I assume you're familiar with Burzum and you know about the history of the man behind it, Varg Vikernes, and his music. So I'm not going to give you a history lesson. I'm assuming you already know. If you don't, you can look it up. I'm here today to talk about the music. And on that note, I know it's considered to be a controversial band considering his views on particular things like political views occasionally, or his extracurricular activities outside music, especially in the early 90s. That's how the band rose to a lot of fame, you know, partly why, you have to admit. But I'm not going to talk about that. For me, I just really enjoy the music, so I'm going to talk about those releases today. As I said, I don't own all of his albums, just the pre-Prison and Prison albums. So again, if you're not familiar with the history, which is doubtful, he did go to prison for a number of years, and then after he was released, he made some more albums. I actually don't own any of those, and there's not a particular reason on my part. I just never got around to buying those albums. So a lot of people have told me they're actually really good. I just haven't had a chance to discover them yet. So what I'm going to talk about today is pre-Prison and Prison albums. And with the ones he recorded in prison, there are only 2, so it's hard really to do a ranking discographies with that. But I thought what I will do, just to make it different and to change it up a bit, I will do a ranking discography of his pre-prison albums. Like the first 4 albums released before he went to jail, they are considered legendary, very influential in the black metal scene, and are just, you know, great music. So everyone has their own opinion about what their favorite album is. So rather than just show them all, I thought I would order them for you. But again, this is my list, so if you disagree with it, that's fine. It's always good to generate some discussion, so let me know why you disagree. That'll be cool. And we'll just get straight into it. So 4 albums. It's funny, my ordering is almost chronological, but it's a little bit different. So enough babble, we'll just go straight into it. So four albums, ranking from 4, like my least favorite, to 1, my most favorite, and that's what we'll do. So coming in at number 4, this was the first album actually, Burzum, self-titled. So Burzum. I've got this really glossy digipack, so sorry about the glare there. And so actually all of the formats I own his albums in are digipack, so I'm not sure if that's the same with everyone else. It is good though, because sometimes I don't like all the booklets you get and everything. So all lyrics here, as usual. He's like some of the lyrics are in English. I think in this album all English actually, but he translates them into German as well. The disc. But that's because this album also includes the Aske EP. But for now, I'm just talking about this whole album. So this was the first one, came out in 1991, I think. I know it's many people's favorite, so you might be thinking, what the hell, when I'm saying it's number 4. I don't dislike it, I really like it a lot, but there are just some albums I like even more than this. So this is when black metal was very fresh, that Norwegian scene, so this was one of the first albums that came out in that era. Very influential, as I said. This one's extremely raw, but it really set Burzum apart from other bands in the sense that he had a unique style of playing. The guitar riffs were very raw. The vocals were very tortured and screamy and hoarse, like very different to like a band like Mayhem or other bands in the scene at the time. So he definitely stood apart as unique. This is a great album. As you know, or if you're not familiar, like Burzum's music it's often quite primitive sounding, but there's a lot of, on the surface, like in terms of the sound, but there's a lot of sophistication going on underneath. and there's quite repetitive, simple structures in the music, but it's very hypnotic and very sort of trancey. So that's what you get with this album, and there's some really great dark atmospheres. Like some of my favorite songs on this would be Feeble Screams from Forests Unknown, like just that riff when the drums stop at the beginning and like it goes in with those hoarse vocals. It's just so atmospheric, really good. Also Ear, Lord of the Depths, like those screamy, tortured vocals again, and the pseudo thrash riffs in that. It's just like really, really catchy and like dark song. That one, I love that. Also Spell of Destruction, one of my favorites. That's a slower one, but you know, you've got that 4/4 mid-paced drumming and like the howling vocals and everything. It creates such a dark atmosphere. So those first 3 tracks would be some of my favorites. I also really like the song War, which is like sort of like a mid-paced punky kind of song, aggressive with the screamy vocals again. And yeah, that's about it. Like the other ones, I'm not saying I dislike them. Channeling the Power of Souls into a New God, that's the experimentation with the keyboards and the sort of ambient kind of stuff. That's a good one. The Crying Orc, I've never been that fussed about, to be honest. And then My Journey to the Stars, that track has grown on me recently. But yeah, still not one of my favorites. And then Dungeons of Darkness is a noise outro. So again, not saying anything bad about this album. Like those, my 4 favorite songs, they are just brilliant. So you've definitely got to check this album out. It's essential. As I said, there's just other albums which I like more than this one. So you see here it includes the Aske EP, which that's Norwegian for ashes. So that consists of 3 songs, Stemmen fra Tarnet, Dominus Satanas, and A Lost Forgotten Sad Spirit. That first track, Stemmen fra Tarnet, is one of my favorite Burzum tracks of all time. Like just so, I don't know, like the riff, it's just so menacing and evil sounding, like a bit punky at the same time, but like it's got this really irresistible vibe to that song, and then like the tortured screamy vocals over the top. It's just, I love it, and like the mid-paced drumming, one of my favorite Burzum tracks. That's great. Dominus Satanas, again, not a bad track, but it's just not one which really stands out to me a lot. And then A Lost Forgotten Sad Spirit, I'm not a huge fan of that song in the sense that it doesn't really get going and it's very slow. It's a bit hypnotic, but this EP, this 3-track EP on this one, it's worth it for that song, Stemmen fra Tarnet alone. But I hope I don't outrage too many people by saying this is my least favorite Burzum album, but as I said, I still really like it. Tell me what you think. Okay, so that's Burzum with the self-titled album Burzum and Aske EP. Okay, so that was number 4. Coming in at number 3 was the album that followed, for me, like my 3rd favorite, was the album which came after this. This is Detsom En Gangbar. So again, this is an old second-hand copy I bought in like 99, I think. But it's served me well over the years. So again, you've got the glossy cover. Lyrics are in English and Norwegian, but they have the German translation once again. Yeah. Now, yeah, I really like this album. You might think it's my 3rd favorite, but do I dislike it? Absolutely not. It's brilliant. Just again, with these early albums, like track 1 and 8, they're just noise tracks. It's just filler to me, like it doesn't really do a lot. I know it's creating a dark atmosphere and everything, but you just can't hear a lot. But then the songs that are really good on this, I just love, like Key to the Gate is just a classic. I remember when I heard that song, when I first bought this CD, I thought, I've never heard anything like this. It sounds a bit thrashy again, but those tortured, screamy vocals kick in. And then the atmospheric parts, it's just a really interesting song. En ring til a herska. Sorry if I mispronounced the Norwegian there. I believe that's Norwegian for one ring to rule them all, because of course this project was influenced a lot by Tolkien. Burzum was, I think, was it the language of the Black Orcs? I think that was the inspiration. But yeah, so one ring to rule them all. That is a great atmospheric, dreamy kind of song. You know, with those Viking kind of dirgy vocals. Really, I've always loved that song. Lost Wisdom is another great track, like very catchy, mid-paced punky with this like heavy, badass, chunky riff. Really like that. Yeah, Lost Wisdom, and then also just some very emotive, bleak-sounding melodies in that song. So Lost Wisdom is great. Handsome Reister, keyboard instrumental track, sounds very medieval. It just creates this medieval atmosphere, and I love that. One of my favorite Burzum tracks of all time is track 6, Na Himmelen Klana, which is Norwegian for, I think, As Sky is Clear or Nearby Sky is Clear, something like that. But an instrumental all done on guitars, but like just so, it's quite simplistic, but just such an emotive track, and it creates this eerie, dreamy atmosphere. I really love that song. So yeah. And then track 7, I can't pronounce that one. That's like a faster, more aggressive one. It's good again. But yeah, for me, my favorite tracks on this: Key to the Gate, Endring til a herska, Lost Wisdom, Han som reiste, and Himmelen Klane. So 5/8 of the album. Brilliant. And this one is still more raw than symphonic, even though he started to use keyboards in this album. But definitely I like it a lot more than the debut album, for sure. So that's Burzum with Detsom En Gangbar. Okay. Excuse me. It's Friday. Alright, so coming down to the last two. This will spark some controversy, I'm sure. I know people have their opinions on what the best album is, so I'm just going to go straight into number 2. For me, my second favorite album, this is Filosofem. So Norwegian for philosophy. So I can imagine some of you are already screaming, saying, what? No, this one's the best. It is a brilliant album. I love this album, definitely. But I have a preferred one, which I'll get into in a moment. So chronologically, those two are in order. This was the last one, which was released, I think, after Varg went to prison, like 1995, I think it came out. And yeah, this has shown a significant development in musical style. There's a lot more focus on atmosphere with the use of keyboards and that dreamy kind of element to the music. And there's also some experimentation with electronic and trancey kind of music on this. So just show you, I've shown you the disc. This booklet I haven't taken out in years. Like I bought this one in '99, I think. And it's got some, I don't think these are lyrics actually. No, it's like some Norwegian folklore, and everything's written in Norwegian. So you've probably seen this. Once again, this is an interesting piece of trivia. I read the actual intentional song titles. They are in Norwegian and English, but on the back he's translated them into German again. So the German titles are the ones which people usually refer to for these, and I do too. Like, it's just a natural thing to do. So the first track, Dunkel Height, which is German for darkness. Brilliant track, like one of Burzum's best songs, definitely. Like just very atmospheric with the use of keyboards, very dreamy, that keyboard melody over the fuzzy guitars and these distorted, evil sounding vocals. I remember showing a friend back in '99 or something, and he said, you know what, I listened to that Burzum album you loaned me last night. He wasn't really a metal guy, like he sort of liked some of that stuff, and he said, it's just so brilliant. He goes, I can see how people would think this is so harsh, but like when you listen to the atmosphere on that, it's amazing, and I couldn't agree more. So great track. Track 2, Jesus Tod, which is German for Jesus' death, or death of Jesus. That is a very hypnotic track, like again with like very distorted, screechy guitars, but just like this really tremolo, empowering melody. When you hear that, it's just like amazing, and it just repeats itself. It goes on and on and on with some variations, but like with the vocals again, which sound just truly distorted and harsh and evil. It's a really cold, grim kind of atmosphere. Then track 3, Erblikket die Töchter des Firmaments, so Beholding the Daughters of the Firmament, I believe, yeah. That is a great track, like again, mid-paced atmospheric track with some dim keyboards and synths in the background. Like again, laying on the atmosphere. That is just a brilliant song. So like tracks 1, 2 and 3, nothing bad so far. Then track 4, Gabriel Kate, which is German for decrepitude, I think. That is a track, it features no drums, just guitars and keyboards, but it's got this, it invokes these images of like Norse landscapes in winter. It's just so cold and dark, and like you hear the lyrics in it, like he says, beware the light, it will take you away to where no evil dwells. And it's just like, it's so atmospheric, atmosphere inducing when you hear those vocals and the lyrics. It's very emotive, that's what I find anyway. So a brilliant track again. And then track 5, which is, I'm not even going to pronounce it. That's the long instrumental. Like it goes for about 20-23 minutes, something like that. And it's all electronic, like keyboards, but just so hypnotic, very repetitive, but like these tinkly kind of keyboards, which just sound so enchanting. That's how I would describe that. So really love that song, and it just goes on and on and on, and then some bass variations with the keyboards. It's like 25-minute instrumental, hypnotic, trancey. It puts you in a certain mood when you listen to that song. Like some people might say, oh, that's unnecessarily long, but that's just kind of the charm of that atmosphere. You get completely drawn in. Then track 6, Gabriel Kate 2, so Decrepitude Part 2. That is a variation on Gabriel Kate track 4, except it's got these weird like clicky sounds and running water in the background, so I don't like it as much as the original version, track 4, but I think it's just been like doing some kind of artistic, abstract variation on that. I don't know. I mean, I don't know the reason. I'm not purporting to, so you know, what the fuck do I know? But I just prefer the track 4 version. But yeah, brilliant album. If you haven't heard this is an absolute classic. You must check it out. As with, actually, you should check all of these ones I've talked about, but you can see that this is one that I really like. Like, no bad songs on this album, and it's like no other album. Like, and having said that, a lot of bands try to replicate or copy Burzum, and they do a good job with the vocal style or the guitars, but no one truly sounds like Burzum, especially this album, in my opinion. So check it out for sure. That's Burzum with Filosofem. Alright, so that's my number 3. So let's just recap the order. So number 4, Burzum, self-titled. Number 3, Detsom En Gangbar. Number 2, Filosofem. So you guys know what's coming if you're familiar. My absolute favorite track, my number 1 by Burzum, is Hvis Lyset Tar Oss, or Hvis Lyset Tar Oss. I think that's the Norwegian pronunciation. So that translates to When the Light Takes Us, or If the Light Takes Us, I think. Yeah. So one might say this is my favorite album because it was the first one I heard when I ordered this via mail order from Amsterdam, I think in like 1998. So I was like 19 at the time, but I was already heavily into black metal back then, but Burzum had always passed me by, so this was my introduction to it, and I thought, wow, it's just unbelievable. But it's not just because it's my favorite. It's not just because it's the first album I bought by Burzum, but I just really think it sounds like no other. Like the opening track, Detsom En Gangbar, not to be confused with the album, I think that's one of the best black metal songs ever written. You know, just with the thunderous drumming and that mid-pace riff and the 4/4 drumming and those tortured, screamy vocals. But again, he incorporates keyboards in that song, which just make it sound so mammoth and epic and monumental and just like cold and emotive and eerie. Such a powerful song. Like it invokes melancholy, but also this icy cold sound. It is just brilliant. So I would say that's probably my favorite Burzum song ever, Detsom En Gangbar, the opening track. So I'm not going to go into it in too much detail because you can just go and listen to it, but brilliant. Also, now tracks 2 and 3, Hvis Lyset Tar Oss and Slottet fra Drømmen, they are very sort of ambient black metal tracks in the sense that the drums are going very fast and it's like blast beats, but it's in a kind of like monotonous kind of way. But then you have these distorted guitars going over the top and these screamed vocals again, and it's just like through the repetition of these simplistic structures with the blasted drumming, it's hypnotic. It really is. So and then the drum rhythms change up. And oh, by the way, on that note, so Varg, the one man behind the project, he did all of the instruments, so vocals, guitars, drums, bass, keyboards. I think with the exception of the Aske EP where Samoth from Emperor played bass, but it was largely a one-man show. So he did everything, and he changes up the drumming rhythms in those songs, and it just makes for some really standout parts. In Slottet fra Drømmen, like that dramatic part at the end where he's got the really wailed vocals and the keyboards soar over the top, it's just incredibly powerful. I can't describe it. Like to this day, like 20 years later, I listen to it and go, it's just absolutely amazing. Then track 4, Tomhet, which I think is Norwegian for emptiness. That is a dark ambient track. again, but no, not dark ambient. There is melody to it, but it's all done on keyboards and I think with a drum machine in the background. But it's not melancholic. It's a sad sounding song. So like it really creates that emotion to me of like, you know, loneliness and sadness. But it's done so well, but it's very epic and it builds up and it's really talented the way it's done. So just 4 tracks on this album, but I think it's as long as a normal full-length album because like most songs, I think like Tomhead goes for like 17 minutes or something, so I think the average clock time is 10 minutes per track, but that gives you an indication about how epic it is. I really like this artwork too, it's very atmospheric, sort of suiting the album. Yeah, but yeah, in my opinion, this is the best Burzum album. If you disagree with me, that's fine, just tell me why. It's always good to generate some discussion. So, Burzum with Hvis Lyset Tar Oss. Okay, so just to be clear, just checking the aircon there. Yeah, so I'm only going to rank those ones because the 2 Prison albums are quite different stylistically. So, I find it's hard to just mix 2 completely different styles and then do some kind of ranking order. So just to let you know, I've only ranked the pre-Prison albums. Here you go. And these other ones I'm just going to talk about after a sip. Okay, so again, I'm not going to go into the history of this band, but after he went to prison, he released 2 albums while on the inside. So the first of those was Dawdy Boulders. So again, I apologize if I've mispronounced that. I think the other alternative title was Baldrs Dod, so the same thing, the death of Balder. So you see, there's the artwork, already creating an atmosphere, it's quite medieval. The dancing women there. And it does come with a booklet, which is quite extensive. So again, it gives some history and background, but everything is written in Norwegian. And this, I think, it's like a 6-chapter story, so it does actually tell a story. I was familiar with it a long time ago. To be completely honest, I haven't read up on it lately, so I apologize for my ignorance. I'm just talking about the music today. I used to have the long sleeve t-shirt of this album years and years ago. And so the back had this design. Sorry, the front had this design, and the back had the dancing women. It was like really cool, but I don't know what happened to that. This was like 99, something like that. But yeah, I wish I had that today because it was just an awesome shirt, and I really love this album. So what you've got with this album, because he was in prison and he didn't have access to guitars and normal instruments, he created music on keyboard. But anyway, this album was created purely on synthesizers and keyboards. What it is kind of atmospheric music consisting of medieval, neoclassical music and dark ambient, but it's not quite any of those things. It's all mixed together. So he creates a lot of string effects with the synthesizers. So like you hear a lot of instruments sounding similar to like violin and viola, but also piano and keyboards. And it just invokes this very atmospheric, medieval kind of sound. Like you'll know what I mean when you hear it, but it's just very, again, it's quite simplistic and repetitive. Like again, it has a trance-like kind of quality in the sense that, not as in techno trance, but like trancey as in hypnotic and repetitive. But some of these like main melodies or main piano riffs or keyboard riffs you hear, they are just so catchy and striking, and they really create a certain mood. So all tracks on this album are great. Like even as I listen to this years later, I just think really each and every of the 6 tracks is great. Track 3 are Baldrs Dod, like just a really haunting atmosphere and keyboard riff in that song. Track 4 has got some bombastic drumming in it, so it sounds like a medieval march or something like that. And then track 5 is just epic, and track 6, that's got this atmosphere of triumph at the end, like with a lot of synthesizers. I think it's talking about like a sunrise, but like you feel the emotion when you listen to this album. And I'm just trying to think about track 2 actually. So going back to track 2, I think that's a piano track as well, and it's showing his classical influences. But so think about that like a mix of keyboards, string instruments, piano. I'm sorry, I'm waffling on a bit, but this is like no other album to me. It's unique, and I really like it because it's a mixture of it creates a certain atmosphere, but it's a mixture of emotions, like melancholic at times, triumphant at times, sorrowful, but always atmosphere. So I think it is a really underrated album. Like most people say, the guitar-oriented albums are the best. Yeah, and like you can't deny that. That's like the trademark Burzum, but this is a really underrated one. So if you haven't heard it, I implore you to check it out. That's Burzum with Dawdy Boulders. Okay, so the last one I'm going to talk about today, this was the second and last one he did in prison. This is Hlidskjalf. Sorry again for my mispronunciation. Now, what I put the disc for this is behind me, because I was listening to it just before. So again, I think this one's divided into chapters. It tells a story. There's the booklet. Quite nice design, like this gold lettering. And again, it doesn't include the lyrics, but it tells the story behind each song. Yeah, and this one is actually quite different to Dawdy Boulders. Like, again, it is keyboard-oriented music, but it is very different to Dawdy Boulders. So Dawdy Boulders was more sort of like grandiose and bombastic. This one is even more atmospheric, and it's placing a greater emphasis on the electronic aspects of the music. Like just some of the, I'm no expert on this kind of equipment, like just some of the panning and the sounds he does, like they're so piercing and sharp. I think with Dawdy Boulders, like very primitive equipment was used, but this one it was like maybe a better quality synthesizer or something. But again, it's a mixture of those different elements like neoclassical, classical, dark ambient and folk music, that kind of thing. But there's just some really striking moments on this album, especially the first track, like Twist Us Hair. It's like, ding, just the first inkling of keyboard you hear is like, wow, this is striking. And it's got some, like the second track has got a like kind of warlike atmosphere, you know, you imagine people marching into battle. Then you have some tracks where it sort of like sounds very folky, like dancing around a maypole kind of music, but just really, really emotive music and like creative. When I first heard this, I just thought, I've never heard any music like this before actually being made, but the atmosphere that it created, it was something I just thought, this is, yes, I love this kind of music. Like it struck a chord with me. So I really do like this album. The only thing I'll say compared to Dawdy Boulders, while it's different, there are not as many standout moments. Like Dawdy Boulders, I would say I love every track the whole way through. This one, there are some parts where it's more sort of, it adopts more of an ambient quality, but that's okay because it's all about atmosphere. It's just not grabbing your attention the whole time. But incidentally, I have a lot of friends who are really into electronic music, and when I played this to them back in the day, they said, oh, I really like the effects he does, like that panning, it sounds great. So I think it appeals to, well, obviously to non-metal people because it's not metal music, but some of the effects he does with the synthesizers and the machinery, it's really quite impressive and striking. So this is a great release as well. So sort of like the swan song from the, and people always said this was probably going to be his last album, but then when he was eventually released from prison, he released a few more metal and ambient albums, which I don't own, so I'm not going to talk about those. But anyway, this is Burzum with Hlidskjalf, the second and last prison album. Alright, so speaking of the post-prison albums, which ones do you recommend? Which ones do you like? I haven't heard much of any of them, to be honest, so it's your chance to inform me of something. And yeah, that'd be great. So yeah, as I said, with this band, I know there's a lot of controversy surrounding it. I really enjoy it just for the music, and I don't go beyond that. But that's ultimately why you listen to a band, I think. Or anyway, in my opinion. So anyway, that's it for this update. I appreciate your patience in watching this video. Hopefully you stuck it the whole way through. Thanks a lot if you did. Once again, thanks for watching. Thanks for supporting this channel. I hope you continue to watch. If you like this video, please leave me a thumbs up. I'd really appreciate it for the support. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next video. Take care. Cheers.